I have absolutely no doubt that AI and robots will be a major influence in our children's lives and their education. We acknowledge and respect AI and for the transformation it's going to have, but we want to really make sure we first got a hold on the human factor. We really want to know the secret sauce. It's nothing to do with buying and selling businesses. It's everything that happens before my day really starts.
So we've got Adrian Knight in the house today. We're talking about his company, Spectacular Group, which provides an integrated learning experience for children, parents, and schools, currently educating over 10,000 kids under 5, multi-million-dollar business, disrupting the education industry, which I think we can agree needs some disruption. Adrian Knight, what's up?
Hello, Mark. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you here. I've got a 4-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. And, I care very deeply about my kids' education. And it strikes me that the education industry is dramatically changing. We've got iPads, we've got AI teachers, we've got games. We had Zoom calls for almost 2 years. You had 6-year-olds on Zoom calls. Holy crap. Let's not even get into COVID just yet. And I also noted here that 25% of American children grow up without being literate. They're illiterate. 25% of American children are illiterate. Adrian, what the hell's going on? How does Spectacular Group help us solve this problem?
It is absolutely shocking, some of these stats out here. And I too have a 4-year-old as well, Mark. And my daughter, Evie, was very much without knowing it, the catalyst to all of this. And just prior to Evie turning 1, I discovered through a series of synchronistic events that it's those early years in the child's life, those first from newborn to 5 years old, they are the years that are so formative to how the rest of their life will pan out. Not entirely, of course, but those skills that they learn in those first few years are just critical skills that will do them well in their life. And so with that in mind, when I was attending classes with Evie and being part of her life, and I was looking around me, I was just gobsmacked by the quality of activities and education that was being delivered to under 5-year-olds. It was so shocking to me that this part of their life had the most impact on how their lives would pan out. And yet it felt like the most underserved part of it, to the point that I just felt I need to do something here. I need to play a role here. And that started what is now Spectacular Group.
It's sick. And, at that age, it's kind of hard for adults to contextualize this. But I was talking to the pastor of my church the other day, and he said, listen, a young child, their brain is not a filter. It is a sponge. It is a sponge. And if you're giving your kid access to a tablet or a phone, or you're just popping on Netflix, they're not getting potentially the stuff that you want them to get. They're just not getting it. So tell me a little bit more about the Spectacular Group and the structure, because you've got over 10,000 kids enrolled under 5. That's spectacular. So how did you get it from zero to hero?
Yeah, so my skill set is buying and selling companies. That's my background. That's what I do. And I had no intentions of going into the children's education space. I had zero experience, zero backstory. I had never had any role or interest in an education company. But it was my experience as a dad and being there with my 1-year-old daughter that made me realize that something needed to change here. And so I started looking around for potential acquisitions, and I started to understand more about children's businesses and how they worked and how they operated. And I was surprised, but not surprised, to learn that a large majority of these businesses were very small. They tend to be owner run, and they weren't really run as a business. They were run more as a passion project or something that the person running that wanted to do. But I felt that there were some basic business principles missing here, and that there could be some value in bringing a collection of these companies or businesses together that had services that fit in like next to each other, but didn't necessarily compete next to each other, because ultimately the end customer was the same. Like the end customer was me and Evie and my wife Vicky. Like we were the same end customer, but we was attending one class because we wanted to develop Evie's sort of speech and language communication, but then another completely different class because we wanted to develop her social skills and confidence. And it just felt that there was something drastically missing here, that certainly with a skill set and background from where I come from, that we could start to build and assemble almost like bricks, building bricks, like Lego, almost. So yeah, it's gone great guns. I didn't expect it to get to the size that we have got, certainly in the speed that we've got here as well. We're currently a multi-million revenue group. We've got around 70 locations across the UK, and each of those locations will deliver hundreds of classes like between them per week. And we just feel like we've barely got started.
So how are you using technology in your courses? Like, because I feel like technology is really important. I was reading the article the other day that the future teachers are all going to be AI robots. Yeah. You know, because they're going to know exactly the way you think. They're going to understand your problems. They're going to be able to deliver questions and learnings based on every single individual kid. My wife's a teacher, by the way. She teaches kindergarten. So same kind of age group. That is a really hard job. Every kid is different.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering, like, how do you scale this up? What role do you think AI and robots have in education?
AI and robots it's a very interesting topic in the terms of education. We've taken a slightly different stance to this. I have absolutely no doubt that AI and robots will be a major influence in our children's lives and their education. But what we focus on is actually the human element and the human touch. And this insight came from COVID and the 2 years of COVID, where there was, certainly in the UK, multiple lockdowns. What we have seen out of that is that children who would normally have been attending classes have significantly underdeveloped skills. So, for example, their social and communication skills are not where they normally are at this point in their growth. So we've sort of taken that and we've kind of taken the stance of, AI is not going anywhere, but let's focus on the human aspects and bring that in to our children and just, give that to them before we lose too much touch, too much touch from it. So,
and listen, I really appreciate that, because I think the go-to for a lot of parents is, here, kid, you're bothering me. Just play on this tablet for a minute, which I'm a dad. I get it. Sometimes we need that 30-minute break. But if you're just relying on that, it's easy to over-rely on that. And I just got to touch on this for a minute, because during the COVID-19 lockdowns, when they said, hey, no more school, what the hell did you think was going to happen, people? I was working in the insurance industry at the time, and one of the girls in my office had an 8-year-old boy. He's an 8-year-old boy. And what was the solution? Can't go to school. It's too dangerous. It's too unsafe to take 8-year-olds to school. She had to bring her 8-year-old to the office with her, sat him on a laptop for 9 hours to do Zoom teaching. Do you think that works? You're going to sit an 8-year-old boy down for 9 hours looking at a Zoom screen, which, by the way, the teachers have no idea how to teach on Zoom. It's a different experience.
Yeah.
What do you think the long-term ramifications are of that?
I think the long-term ramifications are significant and far more than we realize at the moment. And because of the platform we now have, we are getting feedback from across the country, like literally across the country, saying how children they are more needy when they're being dropped off. They're clinging on to their parents more. They're not. So like the social aspects, they're not connecting and communicating as much with other children. And, some people hear that and say, but it wasn't in the grand scheme of things that long. But then you have to think about the child. Like if they're 4 years old and they've spent 2 years in this COVID period, that's half of their lives. And this is the part of their lives where they are learning the key skills that will set them up for life. So I think the long-term ramifications are going to be significant. And I feel as though we don't quite fully understand or appreciate just how significant they're going to be, because you can't teach a kid on an iPad through Zoom. Like you can't, they don't learn that way. They learn through play and they learn through interaction, which is exactly why, going back to the AI question, like we acknowledge and respect AI and for the transformation it's going to have, but we want to really make sure we first got a hold on the human factor, like the kids, that they're connecting in the right way.
100%. Geez, it really bothers me when I'm at the playground with my kids and I look around and every single dad, you got to step it up, man. Y'all freaking got to step it up, because when every single dad is just staring at their phone, it's a big problem. And the other thing that, like, to your point, we don't even know the long-term ramifications. If 25% of kids can't read now, what do you think it's going to be in 10 years when they're, because this is what happens. This is the exact problem that happens in school. And y'all can send me all your hate mail. I don't really care. This is what happens in school. Kid does bad. Teacher doesn't want to deal with it, pushes them ahead to the next grade. Kid is already starting out the next grade behind, which leads to acting out, which leads to problems with the teacher. With the teacher's like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to push the kid ahead again. And all of a sudden you're just delaying that problem. It's a ticking time bomb, because that kid's going to grow up without the skills that he or she needs to actually be successful in the real world. It's unbelievable. Not to mention, by the way, you're putting these masks, these dirty, stinking, gross, disgusting masks on a 4-year-old, which my 4-year-old is touching the mask or taking the mask off. There's boogers in the mask. I don't know what y'all think was going to happen. And, again, not a professional educator, but kids, you learn to speak by watching lips and tongue movement, right? Mm-hmm. So if the teacher has a mask on, the kid's not even going to learn how to speak the damn language.
Yep.
What the hell's going on?
It's so true. In our speech and communication business, like, it's shocking the queues of the waiting lists of parents who have signed up because their kids, their speech and language communication has fallen so far behind. And I completely agree. Like, the very fact that we were wearing masks, like how, like, you couldn't see anyone talk. So how is this young child, who quite often we just, they're there. We don't think through the implications of what we're doing. Something as simple as putting on a mask is having a direct and significant effect on their ability to learn from you. And as parents, they're the kids, we're the role models who they learn from the most.
And from a monetary perspective, right? Because listen, the show's about making some damn money. Why is this not as much of a priority? Why is this not as much of a priority? Because as a parent, the most important thing to us is our kids. We want our kids to be good. We want our kids to grow up happy, healthy, educated, positive impact on society. But, as you mentioned, you kind of got into this and you're like, from a business perspective, the business people aren't getting into it. Why is that? Why is it because there's just a glass ceiling that's hard to break through? Like, why are we not seeing more millionaires, billionaires, business people getting into the business of education?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. There's two factors to it, I believe. The first one is that when people first look at this sector, they naturally assume, there's no money in it. And I was that person for years. It was only when I started looking at the financials of different companies in this space when I realized, individually by themselves, not setting the world alight. But if you put 4, 5, 6 of them together and you start to consolidate certain back office functions, this all of a sudden becomes a very more interesting and attractive business. Certainly one that can grow and scale. The second one as well is that certainly in the UK, the education industry is full of people who come in and then go quite quickly. They come in with the intent to make change, but then they realize how hard it actually is. And this is largely coming from government and a lot of the more longer term institutions that are a bit more set in their ways. So that can get tiring. I've certainly come up against that already, and I'm so early into my journey, but it's a case of certainly myself reminding myself why I'm doing this, because it is about the kids. And I feel like if we keep the focus on that, then the commercial aspects will take care of themselves after, and that's proven to be the case so far.
I can appreciate that. I think mission-based businesses are important. I just wish more. I just wish there was more emphasis on this product, because like I said, and you can tell that I'm pretty passionate about this. I'm pretty freaking passionate about this because, again, if your kid does bad on a test and you're not on it, the teacher's already overworked. They've got 25 kids in the classroom. It's a really hard job. It's really stressful. They don't get paid nearly enough, by the way. I don't know. It kind of pisses me off a little bit, because there are so many kids that are being left behind. I'll give you a quick example of this. I was talking to a dad the other day. I was on this Indian princess event with a bunch of dads and daughters. And I was talking to this dad. He said that there was a local school. His daughter was in this school. And for the first month of PE, had PE every day, 20 classes, the PE teacher didn't teach anything. The teacher didn't even have the kids running laps. The teacher, because she was quote unquote training the next teacher, said, "Hey kids, just play on your phones." For 4 weeks, 20 classes, the PE teacher had the kids on their phones. What the hell? It gets better. It gets better. This dad found out about it, sent an email to the administration. The administration asked the teacher about it. You know what the teacher did? The teacher called out the kid and said, little Jane's parents called in and said, "You can't play on your phones anymore, so go run laps." You know what I say? It is a business person. You're fired. You're fired. Not to quote Donald Trump, but you're fired.
Yeah.
Unacceptable.
This is it. See, I have this inverse relationship with technology from an educational perspective, because I understand and fully appreciate and respect the power that something like AI can bring to this sector. But I also feel that it's almost the greatest enemy, because as parents or teachers or whatever, that person overlooking that child or children, it's so easy now for us to simply hand them an iPad or hand them an iPhone or hand them something that essentially releases an element of responsibility from us, in that they can go and occupy themselves. Go back 20 years, it wasn't the case. You had to sit down and play with your child, or you had to do something that was a bit more consuming as a parent or, an adult, but it had a bigger and better impact on that child's well-being and their overall direction in life. And so I just feel like we don't really know right now what the true implications of COVID, of technology, is going to have on our kids. But my gut feeling is that right now I feel like the cons are far outweighing the pros, and it's down to us and it's down to educators to acknowledge that and to start using technology in a bit more of a responsible manner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to go the route of deepfake porn and the impact that's going to have on kids. I'm not even going to go into AI influencers and algorithms and smartphones, but all this stuff is relevant. I will say, though, that despite all the cons that AI and technology present, it is a reality of the world that they're going to be living in. And we as parents could say, well, back in my day, I drank out of the hose and all that. Great. That's fantastic. That's not the world these kids are growing up in. So I actually encourage my daughter, she's 7, to use ChatGPT. If she's like, hey, I'm going to work on this project, I'm like, cool, let's bust out ChatGPT. You can type in your question. I want her to kind of learn and grow in this technology, because that'll give her a leg up. It's going to help her to be better suited and more ready. I think that's an important consideration.
I love that, because it's the intent of how that's being used. It's not like, oh, I can't be bothered to go and check ChatGPT. It's an understanding of this is going to be a part of your future. So it's almost integrating that tool as part of her education to help facilitate what she wants. I absolutely love that example. I think that's technology used in the right way.
I think so. I do. I want to talk about how you're using technology both personally and professionally. Adrian, you've grown the Spectacular Group to a multi-million-dollar business, and you were kind of talking a little bit beforehand. I said, well, like, what kind of habits are you putting into place? I've read James Clear's Atomic Habits, killer book. Anyone, if you haven't read Atomic Habits, must read. Really good. And I've just started to be very thoughtful about my time, about my habits. And you had mentioned that you're working on this project that, I love how you do it, Adrian. You solve problems for yourself and then you say, okay, let's scale this out. Talk to me a little bit about how you're using your new software platform to improve your own personal habits and grow and achieve these benchmarks like you have with Spectacular Group.
Absolutely. So I have a lot of people approach me saying, how have you done this with Spectacular Group and how are you doing this? They've seen like my life certainly elevate quite significantly in a relatively short period of time. And they want to know how to buy and sell businesses and everything that comes with that. But I sort of say to them, look, if you really want to know the secret sauce, it's nothing to do with buying and selling businesses. It's everything that happens before my day really starts. So I get up at 4 a.m. I spend the first 3 hours of my day, that's like 7 days a week, like 52 weeks, like every day. I spend the first 3 hours of my day focused purely on developing and growing myself. So I exercise, I meditate, I visualize, I read, like a number of high leverage habits that I've integrated. And what that does, and what it's certainly done for me, is that when I then start my day, when I then come back from the gym and go into dad mode or go into work mode, I'm not operating at like a level 2 or level 3 version of myself. Because I've spent time in like investing on myself, I'm operating at like a level 7, level 8. So I'm going in with far much more clarity and confidence. And that has been the real trick to everything, Spectacular Group and the full piece. And this has been so transformational for me that I was getting fed up of tracking, this on that app and this on that app. It was just really bugging me. So I spent the earlier part of this year basically putting together my own app, which is called Elevate Your Life. And this is where I track that whole piece. So the exercise, nutrition, the habits, everything. And I've geared it up in such a way so that it's really easy to manage. Like it's almost like your daily plan. Like this is what you have to do, and it's continued to compound results for me. But with people coming and asking me, saying, "How are you doing this?" Like, I've got this app, and I'm like, "Well, why don't you jump on the app and I'll set up a program for you, and then see how you get on." And it's just been amazing watching how their lives have transformed in such a relatively short period once they started to get rid of the stuff that was holding them back and to spend their time focused on doing things that were moving them towards where they want to go. And so it's still very early days into this, but the results I've personally seen and that I'm now seeing in other people has been, and I don't say this lightly, but it really has been, transformational. It's been really powerful. I can't quite believe it, to be honest.
It's funny, when I first started, I think this is a pretty common vision, is you start your business so you can leave your day job and you can sip margaritas on the beach and everything's going to be wonderful. But what actually I found happens is that, at least for me, you fall in love with the process of building. You fall in love with those habits. You kill the bad habits, like sitting around and drinking on the beach. You kill the bad habits and you institute the good ones, like waking up at a good hour, exercising, drinking water, and getting on phone calls, just spending your time more wisely. But I will say it's not easy. It's not easy. Like, what I have a question for, because I haven't used the app personally. Yeah. What happens if you don't do what you say you're going to do? Like, for example, if I say I'm going to commit to waking up at 6 o'clock, but I don't, I wake up at 8 o'clock. Does it like tase me or something? How does it keep me accountable?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. So basically, when you log onto it, you have like your schedule for the day, and these are the activities, and it's almost like a tick. So when you've done the activity, you tick it off, and there's some psychological like benefit and motivation that comes from, I've ticked off another task, and I've done another task, and now I've done another task. Mm-hmm. But if you get to the end of the day and you're seeing all of these blank, unticked tasks, it works on you. Like it starts to, like, it plays on your mind, and you can bring up like your schedule over the last month or the previous month and see, well, in the last month, I've only hit this task 7 out of 10 times. What's going on there? And so it causes you to go back. So there's no it doesn't tase you, it doesn't shock you or anything like that. But it's the psychological motivation, because then you start asking yourself, well, why am I not doing this? Like, this task in the grand scheme of things is quite simple, and I know it's going to have an impact, yet I can't seem to consistently do it. And so you get deeper, and then the whole thing starts to compound.
I dig that. And I will say that sometimes the knowing yourself, your own body clock's important. I tried like waking up at like 5:30 every morning to go running and whatnot. I'm like this doesn't feel right for me. So I'm typically in bed by 10 to 11 and I'm up around 7 to 8, is kind of my, but I don't think there's one size fits all. But again, I set a goal, I set these different standards, and I try to find what works for me personally. Yeah. And I'm glad that it doesn't tase you, although I kind of respond to pain, or if it could like have my wife yell at me for, if I didn't have, it could be my simulated AI trainer, I don't know. I think it's really cool. I'm glad you shared with us. I'll put a link below y'all so you can try out Elevate Your Life. And Adrian, I just appreciate all that you're doing for children, for kids, for families. Finding out ways to monetize that and make it attractive, I think, is very important. It bodes well for our future if that happens.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. It's it's been a real pleasure to be on here, and I completely agree. And I love the fact that you're as passionate about children's education as I am, and it comes ultimately from being a dad and from having children yourself.
Before we go here, I will say just another thing. I was watching Ray Dalio, and Ray Dalio had done a huge study on the rise and fall of empires. Every single empire that falls, do you know what the first thing that falls is? You know what the first domino is? It's education. When education starts to fail, it is a perfect correlation with when the empire or the civilization is about to fail. It always starts with education.
Wow. It's so shocking yet so believable as well in the same sense. You stop investing in the growth and development of your people and the empire falls. What a surprise.
Yeah. I mean, I love the TikTok dances, kids, but is it worth the civilization? I don't know. Adrian, where's the best place for us to find you?
Yep. So I'm very active on Instagram. My handle is Adrian J Knight. It's the same handle for other social media profiles as well. And I'm just in the process of getting my website, which is adrianknight.co.uk. I'm from Britain, just in case you haven't figured it out by now. So.
Good deal. Adrian, thanks for joining After Hours Entrepreneur, brother.
Thank you so much, Mark.